Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tigerites, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 40 of Stepping Wild. Finding out what he needed to enter the university proved simple enough. He acquired the finest clothing that had the added quality of not making him memorable and stepped to the door. When the guard barred his way, he asked why. Had to re- he had to repeat himself in different language until the man understood him. The look he received made it clear the man thought little of Tibs, despite the way he was dressed. Then he was asked for his family crest and referral letter, and that it was 12 silver on the day for the day's access in Forsterim. Okay, I've confirmed that is fine. In Forsterim silver, only Forsterim silver was acceptable. The tone made it clear he didn't think Tibbs had any of it. He turned around dejected, playing into the guard's expectations. Noble clothing and coins would be easiest for him to get. He didn't know about any family crest, so that would take more work. And the noble's home had something he thought of as a crest displayed on their door or entrance to their property. No shield with designs on them, no symbols that could be used to identify each family. Whatever it was, they didn't advertise it. The reference letter was something else he'd have to work on. Work complicated by the fact that anyone he'd normally go to for those kind of papers was usually affiliated with the thieves and confidence artists. With the master overseeing thievery, the likelihood they also controlled them was high. Finding the willing to work without reporting reporting what Tibbs asked for, depending on the kind of stranglehold the master had on their people. The threat he'd been issued meant it was most likely tight. Going about discreetly finding out where the forger's loyalty lay took dressing in workers' clothes and walking the streets. While most who dealt with papers were part of the offices involved in running the city, not all of them were located within the guild's neighborhood. It was on the third day Tibbs was distracted from his task by a pained cry. Not the first one he'd heard in his roaming the city, but unlike the previous, this one involved someone no older than he'd been when caught with his fingers in a pocket and dressed no better. The man shaking the most probably thief was a burly guard, and Tibbs was heading in their direction before the gloved hand went up. He'd only intended on distracting the man and giving the thief the chance to run, but when he caught the wrist as it was coming down, he was considering channeling fire and showing the man the mistake he'd made. He didn't. He squeezed the wrist. He didn't want to make it that easy on someone who was willing to strike a defenseless child. Don't, he snarled. The guard glared at him. Unhand me and move along. Move along unless you want to share that cell. Okay, I need to establish something. Because while Tibbs is good with languages, I kind of have to establish dad because this is a new city. Um, there we go. The Tibbs glared at him. That's going to be a new phrase. When he spoke, Tibbs now understood enough of the kingdom's language to make out, unhand me and move along, unless you want to share the thieves' cell. Tibbs Tibbs sent a small etching of lightning at the man's hand as he shoved hard, causing it to spasm and let go of the child. He sends them running off, and he placed himself before the guard. "You're going to regret this," the man snarled, shaking his hand. Um, all right, did I name? I mean, it's probably the name of the kingdom that I've used, languages. In Forsterian, no, I'm going to enjoy teaching you what happens to people willing to hit children. That's no child, that's a thief. The man narrowed his eyes. If she's yours, you should have made sure she knew her place, just like your master should have taught you. So the master was known by the guard. If he had that kind of reach, it would make Tibbs' work here so much harder. Not something in Definitely not something he'd manage on his own. I don't need that. I've already established in the previous chapter that Tibbs already expects to need a team, so he'd look for a team after he'd dealt with this poor excuse for a protector of the city's people. He smiled. How about I teach you where people like you belong instead? The guard's hand was wrapped around the hilt, but he didn't pull it out. Instead, he glanced left and right. Like him, Tibbs remembered where they were, the people around them. They moved away, but they were watching. The guard let go of the sword. Your kind aren't worth the trouble. He turned and walked off. This was best. A fight would have caused people to talk. He hadn't bothered with hiding his features, and his description would circulate. It was best if he too walked off and forgot about this. He had work to do. The man could go. Who would stop him the next time he hit a child? Tibbs encountered this type often when living on the street, even if they'd rarely been garbed in guard's leather. He wouldn't stop just because Tibbs had told him off. There would be another child unless the men learned what it meant to be on the receiving end of that pain. He didn't let the man's essence be lost among the others as he followed him. He climbed to the roof as soon as he could to better keep up with the man. He went over all the ways he could make him learn, all the pains he could administer. But by the time the sun approached the city wall and the man had left the guardhouse in regular clothing, he decided that the only pain the man would understand was the one the child would have received at his hands. Tibbs was on top of him by the time the man turned into a smaller street, one currently without anyone else walking it. Tibbs dropped, grabbed the man, and threw him in the alley before he reacted. The man cursed and got to his feet. Who the fuck? Tibbs punched him. What the? He punched him again. You are going to. The man reached for the sword he was no longer wearing. Tibbs planted his fist in the man's stomach. Do you like this? He whispered. He slammed a knee in the same place. Do you like how it feels to be at the receiving end? The man shoved him, and Tibbs let himself move back. I didn't do anything to you. Your kind took her from me. The guard turned to run, but Tibbs was on him. Guards! He managed to let out before Tibbs pulled and threw him deeper in the alley. Call all you want. There's no one here to rescue you. Like the children you hit. Like when they took Mama from me. He kicked hard and the man hit the wall. Please, the man whispers. And do you stop when they beg? He kicked him again. Did they stop when Mama begged? When she pleaded for them not to leave me alone? He grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. Men like you shouldn't be allowed to. Shouldn't be allowed. Aldero? Was that you? A woman asked, and the man's eyes widened in fear. Please don't, he whispered. Tib stared at the man's broken face, at the terror in it, at the terror in his eyes, at the damage it inflicted, and let go of him. Let go he as if he was fire. Aldero, she called again, closer. He etched air and jumped to the roof, fighting the bile. Aldero! She screamed in horror, then ran. Tibs forced himself to glance down. Aldero! She cradled him. Guards! She yelled. But they wouldn't come. There was no one to hear her but him. He ran. He made it 2 roofs before what he'd done proved to be too much, and he threw up again. He let it happen again. When her cries for help came again, he etched air and carried it along the street to the road. It had lost most of its strength by then, but it attracted people's attention. Some came, found them, went back for guards. Tibs forced himself to remain on that roof, hearing them and sensing them as they comforted her, promised him they would find who had dared lay a hand on one of theirs, and make them pay. He remained there well past when they were gone, well past the sun vanishing, wishing he could do the same. He just wanted to protect the child, to look after someone the way he wished there had been someone to look after him. So how had it turned into hurting the man because it felt so good? Aldero the guard had many friends, Tibs found out, unable to keep from returning, from observing the damage he'd done. He needed the reminder of what his anger did, he told himself when he felt like leaving. This was the kind of monster it made him, so he had to be better at controlling it. But men like that made it hard. People charged with protecting, people charged with protecting, but that decided who was worth doing so, and who abused the rest. The man was worse than those nobles the nobles paid. They were in that position because of coins. He'd been willing to hurt a child because he wanted to, the way Tibs had wanted to hurt the man. Tibs forced himself to search for people to build a team with. He used that as a way of staying away from Aldero the guard and his woman. There was no lack of criminals who attempted their trade without the master's approval. The issue Tibs faced was that most of them ended up beaten down until they learned to follow the master's rule. He needed people who stood up to them while managing to hone their skills. A willingness to work without the master's approval wasn't enough for what he needed. They needed to be skilled enough to stand up to opposition if it came down to it, be stubborn enough they hadn't joined or left the city. His need would make for an interesting team. Fortunately, Tibs liked interesting people. Tibs found himself returning to Aldero the guard's home too often over the weeks. He looked for the right people. He and his woman had lived humbly, but even with their friends' help, with all the man's work, they were having trouble affording proper food, paying for their home. Tibs snuck in some nights and hid coins for them to find among their belongings, enough to help alleviate his guilt, but not so much did question where they came from. He learned what the family crest was by accident. A noble did business with the Artisans Guild while Tibs watched a confidence artist work one of the clerks and had to prove which of the families he represented by showing it. Tibs had switched who he followed then, and found out where to ask the questions about the crest without raising suspicions in the process. The crests were made of metal, engraved with the family's emblem, with the emblem of the family. Many decorated them further, but the metal, the engraving, and the official city mark hidden among that were what mattered. They were made by the city and regulated. Stealing one while a noble was about wouldn't work, since they'd realize it was missing the instant they needed a building. They entered a building requiring they prove who they were, and it seemed all business nobles visited demanded that. Short of kidnapping the noble whose crest he'd used to enter the university, its lack would be noticed too quickly and only work once. What he needed was a duplicate, which meant access to a forger of items as well as of papers. He was going to need much more money than the 12 silvers to enter the university, especially if he could hope to convince the forgers to work without the master's approval. This no longer looked like a team. This no longer looked like a team would be enough, he sighed. Tibs was going to have to create a character to take the blame for all the robberies needed to finance his research. But first, he needed to build this team. He needed to build this team. And that concludes chapter 40 of Stepping Wild. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter will be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, it is up for free on Royal Road. If you want to read ahead of the Royal Road and support me in the process, you can find the story on Ream Story, where we are a good number of chapters ahead, at least a dozen, possibly more. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. Links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.